And a very good morning to you. This is Petri here on BBC Radio London's Breakfast Show. We've been talking about this story of twin boys, twin brothers, who were born here in London, who are currently facing the potential of deportation to different countries in the Caribbean, places that they've never visited. The boys, now men, 24 years old, Darrell and Darren Roberts, both currently serving prison sentences, and intention to deport letters, at least has been seen by Greg Mackenzie for one of the brothers, although the Home Office say they don't intend to do so. Well, look, let's try and pick through this. This is quite a complicated case. On the face of it, it seems quite simple. But joining me now is Bella Sankey from Detention Action. Good morning, Bella.
Morning, Petri.
Now, why is it that if you're born here, that doesn't instantly make you a British citizen?
It's a really good question, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't appreciate. I think lots of people do think that if you're born in the UK, you automatically acquire citizenship. That is not the case if both of your parents are not UK citizens. And I think that's a law that really needs to be re-examined, particularly in the context of these cases that we're now seeing, because I think most people would agree, and actually we conducted some polling on this very issue last month, which found that 78% of the British public feel that if you're born in the UK, even if you do receive a criminal custodial sentence at some point, you shouldn't be automatically subject to deportation by the Home Office, which is what's going on in the case of these twins. It clearly is pretty illogical. It doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, because the way that our citizenship laws are, and because we have these very over-the-top deportation laws that make deportation mandatory if someone gets a 12-month sentence, you're seeing more and more of these grossly unfair cases.
When you have a baby here, is my son was born sort of accidentally in Germany, right? But so I found out then, I mean, I had no intention to stay in Germany. I was working there at the time. That the child takes on the citizenship of the mother. Is that the case here in Britain? That if as a child is born here, he or she takes on the citizenship of the mother?
Yes, that can be the case. It's a really complex area of law, so it will be very dependent on individual circumstances. But the case with these twins is that neither parent was a British citizenship, and it was a British citizen, and it remains the case that if you're born in the UK but neither of your parents is a British citizen, you are not automatically acquiring British citizenship. You have to jump through several hoops. It's a very expensive process as well, which means that for many families it's just unaffordable to make their children British citizens, or they can only naturalise, say, one or two of their children because the fees are so high. So there's lots of reasons why it may not happen, as in the case of Darrell and Darren. And the real problem is that you've got thousands of kids who really spend all their lives in the UK. They're either born here or they're brought here at a young age. That's another category of case that we see a lot. They have no links with the country that the Home Office then tries to deport them to. Kids that have been here since they were in nappies, since they were 6 months, 2 years old, have been entirely in our system, like nursery, primary school, and so on. And then they suddenly get to their 20s or 30s and they're facing this really cruel double punishment, because let's remember that these are people that will have served their sentence for the crime that's been committed. But this is a double punishment, and it's, a worse punishment. So many of our clients will say that, of course they accept they need to serve a prison sentence and they need to repay their debt to society, but being permanently separated from your children, potentially, as in one of the cases here, your partner, your wider family, everything you've ever known, for many is just completely unimaginable. And it's effectively a death sentence for some. We know of many cases where people just have not survived when they've been deported to a country that they have no connection with. They're often very vulnerable. They can be preyed upon as a result. And you get incredibly tragic outcomes.
There will be those listening, Bella, of course, that will say, well, don't break the law then. If you're not a British citizen and you're in this country, you know, and you don't want to be chucked out, you don't want to be deported, then don't break the law. There is very little sympathy for somebody who, you know, in Darrell's case, ending up in a prison for GBH for 6 years. There will be lots of people who think, well, no, we don't want him here.
Of course, like no one condones law breaking. You know, I don't think anyone for a second should say, you know, would say that if someone commits an offence, they shouldn't face, you know, punishment and the other things that our system provides. One of which, of course, is rehabilitation. Now, we've always been a country, or for a very long time, we've been a country that does believe in rehabilitation and second chances, and not sort of forever condemning somebody for the worst thing that they've done or the biggest mistake that they've made. And I think part of the problem with the immigration system at the moment is it doesn't recognise the scope for rehabilitation. So that's, you know, completely kind of written out of the rules. And it means that even in cases where somebody has been rehabilitated, has taken complete ownership for what they've done, and has expressed remorse, has served their sentence, and whatever else, that's not taken into account at all. And so it means that we're really sort of saying, you know, for certain people, we don't believe they deserve a second chance, and we are condemning them forever. And I think that's what people find really unfair. And you have to remember that it's not just the individual that's punished by this law. You know, one of the twins has a baby daughter who, you know, is facing permanent separation from her father for something that she had nothing to do with. So she's being punished. And we see that in so many cases. The law was actually changed by Theresa May in 2014 to make it much harder to stay in the UK, even if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 children that you have a really close parental relationship. You know, even in cases where you're essentially the primary carer, you can be ripped from your child's life. You know,
but
after serving a sentence.
Again, Bella, to victimise some of these people who have themselves left victims in their wake. You know, if setting aside these 2 boys that were born here, or these 2 men that were born here, if it's a foreign national criminal who has had no thought for the victims that they've created, ending up in jail and then suddenly remorseful and saying, no, I'll change my ways, it is hardly surprising, is it, that there will be a lot of people who say, no, too late, mate, they're tough. You know, so what if you've got 4 kids? You shouldn't, especially with 4 kids, you shouldn't have broken the law in the first place. So there is a real difference here, isn't there, between somebody who was born here and somebody who is here and then breaks the law.
I think you're absolutely right, Petri, to say that all of these cases are going to be different, and the important thing, I think, is that there's discretion in the system.
So you want nuance?
Exactly. So the facts can be taken into account. I wouldn't argue for a second that someone arrived in the UK very recently, goes about committing offences, you know, shouldn't be punished by, you know, the criminal justice system, you know, thrown into jail, do their sentence, and then deported when they're released. You know, of course there are going to be cases where that is entirely appropriate. But what we're saying is that, you know, in so many, because of the way the laws are now, they're so blunt and they're so harsh and they don't allow for nuance. It means that you get these cases like the one you're talking about today, where clearly there's a very, very strong case for someone to be able to remain in the UK, but the law doesn't really allow for that. And it means that people are subjected to this double trauma. And that's not to say for a second that anyone's underplaying, you know, the effect that some of these crimes will have had on victims. That's always got to be, you know, at the centrepiece, and that's why we've got a criminal justice system, and we need to have, you know, robust sentences where there is, you know, severe
GBH
harms under victims.
Is a serious crime. That's left somebody very badly injured.
Absolutely, and it's right that there are you know, tough sentences for people that commit serious offences. No, you know, but this isn't about the sentencing in the criminal justice system. This is about what comes later, which is an entirely separate system. It's an immigration system, and if you're thinking about public safety and you're thinking about preventing reoffending, you know, one of the things that is widely known is that when people are released from prison, the best way to stop somebody reoffending is to ensure that they can reintegrate into the society that they're being released back into. So, you know, it's well known that having a partner, having a stable family life, being able to have a job, are all things that can really encourage people people not to reoffend. And, that's
Bella.
what our probation service is working on. But deporting people obviously rips all of that away.
Bella, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Bella, thank you.